I found this great quote once, or it's "Be like a duck," where you're nice and calm and serene on the surface,
and
but
your feet are just going
paddling
nuts
like crazy underneath.
Yep.
You know, and so that's kind of the way that I try to run everything. Is that if I can portray this calm, you know, like I got this, it helps.
And in the car on the way there, you'll be making a billion phone calls and paddling like the duck under the water.
Right.
Welcome to the Founder's Story podcast, where we learn from entrepreneurs about their journey from their first inspiration to their first employee and even the steps they took to become the powerhouses they are today. Welcome back to another episode, everyone. My name is Rick Porter. I am your host, and today I am joined by Brian Treitman of BT's Smokehouse. They are actually ranked number 1 barbecue joint in New England and number 20 in the United States of America. And as a self-proclaimed fat kid, I can attest to those numbers. It is amazing, amazing barbecue. Fun fact on our employees' annual anniversary, right? Any employee of Cinch IT on their anniversary, I go out to lunch with them. Just the two of us. We go out to lunch, we hang out, we do whatever, and I let them choose wherever they want to go. And you're one of your original locations, right? Pretty far away from here for us, right? It's a good 35-minute drive for us.
Easy.
Right? Round and both ways. And a couple meaning like 15 times, the guys are like, let's go to BT's. And I used to have to go, damn, all right, it's going to be a long lunch. But we would go anyways because it's so delicious. And now we got it one right down the street, which is even better. I'm sure we'll dive into that in just a little bit. But food is amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to hear this story. So here's the deal. You're going to tell us our founder story. Let's take us all the way back to what? When did we get started? 2007. Yeah. So take us back to 2007. Why in the world did you get into barbecue?
Well, so originally I moved here from Napa Valley, or moved back here from Napa Valley, and I moved to Brimfield to be closer to where my parents were living. I had just gotten married. And at the time I was working in Boston at a restaurant called Spire.
I got to interrupt you already. Yeah. Did you meet your wife in California or out here? In California. And she moved back to Brimfield, Massachusetts.
That's correct.
She must really love you.
She did at the time.
All right, we're getting into bag stuff already.
Yeah.
So, this is what I get for interrupting your story.
No.
All right, so we're back. 2011, you come back to Brimfield.
2007.
Pardon me.
Yeah, so we were in, I was working at a restaurant called Spire in Boston. Yeah. And then I was a transitional chef there. And it was becoming KO Prime with Ken Oringer. And so he and Jamie Bissonette were opening a restaurant in the 90 Hotel. And my job really was to get the staff that was there ready for the transition. And then Ken offered me a job as a sous chef in one of his other restaurants. And at the time I started building a trailer for doing the antique show. And when I moved to Brimfield, I was like, oh, there's this antique show. You know, they've got 100,000 people that come. Yeah, 100,000 people that come 3 times a year. And I was like, there's no barbecue at it. Let me see if I can do this. And so we started building this trailer, and I'd come home from work every day, and the trailer was being built in my driveway. And so I'd see the progress that was getting done to it. I had a couple guys helping me build. Like, we bought a set of axles and built it from the ground up.
Wow.
And then, so I do the first antique show, and I was like, that was a lot of fun. This was awesome. Granted, the first time I ever cooked brisket was on that trailer.
No way.
In Napa, they do tri-tip.
Okay.
Not brisket, or in California.
Sure.
And so, and in 2007, barbecue out here was not, it was kind of a thing, but it wasn't really a thing. And it was like just around then that barbecue really started to take off, and I hit that wave just perfectly, I think.
Now, when you say take off, you mean like the barbecue TV shows, all of restaurants opening up locally?
So the barbecue TV shows had just started taking off. There was a Pitmaster show on Food Network.
Yep.
And one day I was sitting there and I was watching and I was like, oh, brisket, I could try to do that. And so literally the day that we finished putting the smoker on this trailer was the first day that I ever cooked a brisket. And so we got this 14-pound brisket. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, you know. So I made up some kind of rub based off a seasoning salt that I had used before.
How'd it come out?
It was roast beefy.
Okay, because I destroyed my first brisket ever at home, and it's not a cheap piece of meat to destroy. So.
Yeah, so this was very roast beefy.
Okay.
And I'm like...
Yeah, I think mine was something like that too. Yeah, I guess.
It had good flavor,
Okay.
but I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had never taken, like, some kind of barbecue trek or, you know, like, and it was just, all right, so I'm going to put this in there and I'm going to cook it with a bunch of wood and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And so I think I had it on there for like 10 or 11 hours. Okay. I was like, that's got to be done. No, it was not. But it was like the flavor was good. My family and friends were all like, oh, this is awesome. Da, da, da.
People who loved you said it was great.
Right. And so then the first antique show comes around and we finished building the trailer at 3 a.m. the night before I needed to move it to the flea market. And then I got inspected the next morning. And then I started cooking. And so I went in at 6 a.m. and loaded the smoker with 400 pounds of brisket and 200 pounds of pork for pulled pork. And so this was the day before the flea market actually started, but I had to be there 2 days early for the, just to get everything set up. And so the brisket came out at 3 a.m. And I was like super excited. I'm like, this is awesome. Da, da, da. I'm like, oh my God, what do I do with it now?
Yeah.
Because in a trailer, I had one stand-up refrigerator, not like a walk-in that I could
I was going to say, it's not going to fit all of that food.
Yeah. And so I pulled all the meat out and I had it laying on sheet pans, like all around the inside of my trailer. I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm going to kill somebody. Like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
And so then I'm looking, I also had a food warmer. At first I'm looking, like, I put everything in the refrigerator and I had 3 or 4 people there with me that were like helping me celebrate and like hanging out, and we were drinking bourbon and I am sweating because I'm like, oh my God, what do I do with this? So I ended up, I put it all in the refrigerator and I'm hanging out with them. I look up at the refrigerator, it says 97 degrees.
Oh boy.
Like, nope, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
So then I quickly unload it all. I'm looking at it again. I'm like, oh, I'll just put it in the food warmer and it can stay in there because as long as I keep it above temperature for, however long, then I'm good. And so I put it all in the warmer and I went home. I came back at 7 o'clock in the morning and I go to like start serving because I was also doing these things called breakfast fatties.
Okay.
So it's a sausage roll that I stuffed with cheese, pepper jack cheese, and raspberry jam, and then dry rub it and smoke it, and I put it on buttermilk biscuits.
Oh.
So I was doing that for breakfast, and then because I figured I had to be there that long to get everything cooked right. So while the ribs were cooking and the pork was finishing, I served breakfast fatties, and it was. So then I pull one of the briskets out and I'm like, oh my God, this thing is like, is it supposed to be this tough? Like, this is like tough. And so over the course of the week, I learned how to make brisket.
Yeah.
And so by the end of the week,
trial by fire.
Yeah. What I had served at the first day was like this cubed meat that, I needed sauce and whatever.
A lot of barbecue sauce.
Yeah. But the thing I had going for me is that people out here didn't really know what brisket was.
Yeah.
And so I started to get a little bit of a following. And then by the end of the week, the people that had the brisket at the beginning of the week, they're like, oh, this is much better.
Yeah.
And then as time went on, it got better and better. And so at the end of that first week of the flea market, I was like, I want to do this. I want to do barbecue. And so I had 2 weeks left at the restaurant in Boston. and I told them that I wasn't going to do, I wasn't going to continue on with Ken Oranger and doing something there. And I found a spot in Brimfield where I could set up the trailer full time. And so we took the trailer to the campground, got water and electricity to it, and I worked out of it Thursday through Sunday, from 8 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night.
You're officially in business.
I was, and it was interesting because it was like that first day I was like, is this even going to work? You know, like people are driving by at 60 miles an hour. I'm in between Sturbridge and Brimfield.
Yeah.
And there's just a little shack on the side of the road. And at the time it was just my trailer sitting there. Eventually it grew to be my trailer and some tables, and then my trailer, a tent and some tables. And then I added on a construction trailer because I was going to be there through the winter. And so,
and I'm sure the trailer probably wasn't heated at the time.
Oh no, it wasn't even insulated.
Okay.
So, halfway through the summer, we decided I need to figure something out. Yeah. Actually, halfway through the summer, I approached the place that the Country Creamery where BT's now is, and they had just closed. And I said, "Hey, can I rent this through the summer or through the spring, and then I'll buy it in the spring?" And they're like, "No, we want to sell." And I was like, "Okay, well, like this,
I'm not ready for that yet.
I'm not ready for that. I need to get a little bit under my belt to feel comfortable." But so then we took the trailer apart, insulated all the walls, forgot to insulate the floor, but then added this construction trailer onto the side of it and where the serving window was, so that people could come into the trailer so that they could be inside.
Okay, yeah.
And so I made it through the first winter, and I was doing okay, like the serving 30, 40 people a day, which was enough because I had no overhead really. And I lived literally half a mile down the street. So I could get up at any time, come over and check that stuff. And so then the next spring, things started to get a little bit better. We got busier. We started to get people started to know that we were there. And then I opened up at Yankee Spirits. There was a little hot dog stand on the side of the building, or it's still a hot dog stand now.
Okay.
But I found out that people from Sturbridge weren't going to take the 4-mile drive to where I was in Brimfield to buy food from this little shack on the side of the road. So I put a spot in Sturbridge. I cooked all the food in Brimfield. We brought it there every night. And it helped. We were basically doing the same amount of business.
You're just bringing it to them.
Right. So we're doing the same amount of business in both places. And then at the end of that summer, I got written up in the Boston Globe as one of the top 10 barbecue joints in New England.
Now, how did they even hear about you? Like you mentioned, this little shack on the side of the...
No idea. Like it started out, I put up these little signs on the side of the road, just painting a piece of wood that said barbecue and ribs. And then over the winter, the plows took
most of them
pleasure in taking them all out. And then we put this big A-frame sign up and painted it yellow with red writing that said barbecue. And that's all it said. But I was getting people to stop. And I remember the first day that we hit $1,000 in sales. And I was like, I had a line for half the day at the campground. Yeah. It was different at the Antique Show. The Antique Show was guaranteed money because I had an audience.
Huge audience, yeah.
But this was people were actually driving out to see me just to get barbecue.
No kidding.
And so at that point, I was like, this is it. This is what I wanted. Because my idea at first was I want to be this little roadside shack that, like, in the way of Franklin's Barbecue, where people line up and at some point...
Stay in line forever.
Right. And at some point during the day, I run out of food.
Yeah.
And that's it. We close.
Get here earlier next time.
Right. I have since found out that doesn't work in New England.
Yeah.
People don't understand that concept. We run out of ribs or something, and people are furious.
Yeah,
like, I drove all this way, and I'm like, well, I spent 24 hours cooking this brisket. It's I have to plan 3 days in advance.
Yeah, exactly.
But so then in 2010, we moved into the restaurant space. It originally started with 16 seats, the little 4 seats at the counter, which are still there in the 3 booths, and that was it. And the front wall was at the end of the 3rd booth.
Okay.
And the kitchen was small. I had I found a Southern Pride smoker, which is still at the restaurant. It sits outside now. But I found this one in Joilette, Illinois, just south of Chicago, and I called the guy and was like, hey, can I buy that from you? Because he had it listed on eBay. And he's like, yeah, sure.
Come on down and get it.
Yeah, pretty much. And I said, so just out of curiosity, why are you getting rid of it? Because nobody here knows how to use it. My staff just doesn't want to take the time to learn it. And it's easier for me to just get rid of it. I'm like, okay, so I had a freight company come pick it up. We put it in the restaurant. Originally, we were going to be open Tuesday through Sunday. We were going to try to cook enough on Tuesday so that we could clean the smokers on Wednesday. It was going to be 3 of us working in the restaurant. I called my buddy up from, where was he at the time? He was down south somewhere. He had just gotten out of the Army. He and I went to culinary school together, and he was going to be my help. Like, he was going to be the guy that helped me get through this and get it open. So he gets up there and he goes, all right, so how's this going to work? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea.
We're figuring it out as we go.
He's like, what do you mean? You don't have a plan? I'm like, no, there's a counter. There's, people are going to come in. We're going to serve them food. He's like, well, what's the flow going to be? I'm like, I don't know. We're going to figure that out. I'm like, that's your like you did front of the house before. You're supposed to help me with how this works.
I'm worried about the airflow in this,
right?
And cooking back here. You take care of the front of the house,
right? And so, so the first week, I still had the spot at Yankee Spirits, and so there was my buddy Barkley is the guy that went to culinary school with me, and then we had this other kid, Gabe, that was working for us. He was like 6'4", 310 pounds.
Wow.
But he was a kid.
Slash bouncer.
Yeah. But so it was the 3 of us, and I thought the 3 of us could handle this. Like, we were going to do this.
How long did that last?
2 days.
Yeah.
And then we needed a dishwasher, and then when the person that was working at the over by Yankee Spirits was done there, he came and helped at the restaurant with us. So that was this kid, Willie. And so pretty soon I had 10 employees, and we're just cruising along.
And you are officially a real, you're a business now.
We were
fast growing.
Yeah. And it was, like I was like, okay, so here's what my rent is. This is what I need to make every day. And that was my goal, was like, as long as we can hit this on a daily basis, I think we're okay. And then it just started growing.
Yeah. Now, so what, and you've have a long list of awards you guys have won over the years. Best of Mass Barbecue, Food and Wine Magazine put you in as best barbecue in every state, and you won for Massachusetts. And this is like the 2018 timeframe, right? And I'm literally looking at the list we pulled up from research. I mean, they started in 2007 and they just keep going and going and going. Now, when did you transition into being a real business owner and entrepreneur? Because we've had people on this show, and I know people personally who constantly are mentioning your name as somebody who helped them, coach them, advise them in their own businesses. And they talk about how you have a brilliant mind, not only just for cooking in the restaurant industry, but for business. And I'm waiting to see where that transition starts.
Well, so let's see, it was probably 2012. I took a group of my staff with me, and we went and did a barbecue tour of other places in the area. And we went and hung out with Jeff Janikowski, who does Blue Ribbon Barbecue.
Okay. Yeah.
So he was the founder. He had come to me at one point. Him and his partner came to when I first started, and I remember one day I was sitting there loading ribs into the smoker because I used to do that, and they're sitting there watching me rub the meat and put it in the smoker. And Jeff was like, I remember doing that. And I was like,
what do you mean?
Yeah. I was like, what do you mean? You don't do that anymore? He's like, no, now I sit in an office with 3 computers around me, and we have the 2 restaurants, and This one building that we use as our commissary, and that commissary building has to make $10 million a year in order to cover the cost of all the stuff. I was like, holy crap, I never want that. Like, I never want that.
Yeah, I like loading ribs.
Yeah, I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to be the guy that's sitting here. And so we went and checked out all 3 of his spaces at one point. I took my staff with us, and I realized, like, in order to like really do this, that you can't be the guy loading the ribs all the time.
Yeah.
As much as I wanted to be. And so at that point, when I opened in 2007, so I started in May of 2007. My daughter was born November of 2007. The restaurant space opened in January 5th of 2010. My son was born January 21st.
Okay.
And so, like, my home life was mediocre at best.
Yeah.
Because I was spending so much time at the restaurant. And so I started looking for people that could help me. And so I started hiring some of my friends to, be my manager, because they had experience before and whatever. And I was friends with all of my employees. And like, we'd go, after work, when we got done at 10, we'd go across the street to the bar and hang out and have some drinks, and I'd stumble home at 1. And then I realized, like, I can't be doing that. I can't be my employee's best friend.
Yep.
Like, I want to be in their life, and I want to know what's going on and help them. But I can't be their best friend. Yep. And so I slowly started making this transition into, I need to run this as a business. Like, this is all well and good that we're having fun and whatever. But as soon as, 2013, we expanded the restaurant again. And we added 20 more seats or 25 more seats. And at that point I was like, this is a real business now, and I need to treat it that way. And so I started to back off in terms of my engagement with my staff, which is a hard thing to do. And it's also, and so I put a couple managers in place and gave them responsibilities. And that is a very hard thing to do, to let go of these things that,
you're so passionate
about.
Yeah.
And, and not be the guy standing there when your regular customers walk in. But I had some really great staff. And so my staff they were that guy.
Yep.
And so my regulars transitioned to their regulars, or our regulars.
Yep.
And so they knew my name, but they knew everybody else's name at the restaurant also. One of the biggest things that I did when we first opened was make sure that none of my customers were a number. So although our tickets, so anytime that I've chosen to go with a POS company, I make sure that I can put somebody's name on their tickets. Yep. So that we call everybody by name. And so we've gotten to know everybody by name, and they've all gotten to know us by name. And then, so I guess it was like 2013, 14 that I really started to transition into being an owner.
Sure. Now, was that an easy and natural transition for you, or was that a struggle for you personally?
The struggle for me was letting go of, 'cause I'm a control guy.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And and it was being able to let go to a point where it wasn't somebody else's fault when something went wrong. Yeah. And being able to understand, like, I have grown so much as an owner and as a manager, I guess, in terms of the way that I deal with my staff. Or it's not even staff; they're really family members and team. And so the way that I'm really good at, like, sitting at a computer and looking at numbers, I get a lot of joy out of it.
Really?
Yeah, for whatever reason. And so I made that my thing. And so, like, even right now with the stuff at the ballpark, I'm not working at the ballpark, but I know exactly what's going on because of the way that I've set things up and the numbers I can look at. I can know how many people we served every day. We know how much money we made, how many of these sandwiches we sold, and it's all at a quick glance.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of joy out of that for some reason.
Yeah.
And so 2014-ish, I had a couple different people that were managers. And we went through like 4 or 5 different people, thinking they were the right fit. And again, it was my friends, and then it was like
friends of friends.
Friends of friends. And then finally, I decided like I need a real person in here that isn't like that I can work with, that is going to give it to me straight, but that I don't have to worry about. So at the same time, I was going through a divorce, and I needed someone that could take over my role, the day-to-day of the restaurant, and I could take a step back. And so Billy Nemiroff, who I had known since I started, because I used to go sit at his restaurant when he owned Cedar Street in Sturbridge, and I would sit there while they were finishing service. He'd hand me a big bowl of pasta. I'd sit in his kitchen and eat the pasta and just shoot the shit with him.
Sure.
Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
or a PG-13 or whatever.
All right. But yeah, so, you know, he's always been someone that I've turned to. We have very similar cooking styles and management styles. He's a little bit more... he's always been a little bit more of the people person.
Okay.
And so my goal when I brought him on was I needed this place to run without me there. I need to be able to run a business. And at that point, we were really busy. Like we were serving 1,500 people a day on a good day. And we sold like 200,000 pounds of brisket that year. And it was just insane numbers that we're doing.
And I was impressed by 400 pounds at the Brimfield Fair on day one. So.
Right. And so I needed someone there that could manage the people.
Yep.
You know, and so I had this kind of hodgepodge group of employees that were, they were friends, and some, you know, we had like these little cliquey kind of things going on, and but it wasn't super cohesive.
Sure.
We had a lot of fun together, and we put out some, you know, we never had any issues with like getting through service. But there was always like little things that managing 20 personalities every day when you walk in is hard.
Not an easy thing to do. Sure.
Yeah, so being able to do that and run a business, I needed help. And so I brought Billy in, and within a couple of years, like, he did everything that the place is just, it's smooth.
Yeah.
And then my goal, or our goal together was, all right, so let's get this one running and then open another one.
Okay. So that was a goal back in what? So we're 2013, 14 time?
No, that was like 2016.
Okay, got it.
And it was, so part of me is I want to do this, and I want to do it really, really well.
Yeah.
And there's part of me that's really scared about branching out and having more. And because I've seen it fail in other places.
And fail usually in general or on quality or?
Just because if you don't have the focus, you know, like, so if you're in this restaurant all the time doing this thing, it's really easy to focus on it all the time.
Sure.
But when you have 2 of them, then it's which one are you spending more time at? Which one are you where's your focus at? And how do you keep them the same?
Yep.
And so the idea with opening the second one was we have to get this first one to the point where it doesn't need us.
Yep.
Where it can function on its own, where just like little course corrections here and there keeps it afloat. And this other one we're going to have to baby. And one of us is going to have to be there all the time to make sure that it does what it does. And so in doing that, we put the staff in place in Sturbridge where Devin, who's my lead line cook manager, is awesome. And we've nicknamed him the Brisket Commander, and he takes ownership. Like, if you look at his Facebook feed and Instagram feed, it's all pictures from the restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, he's awesome at what he does. And he's passionate and loves it. And he's everything that
you could ever ask for.
Right.
Yeah.
So between him and then Kyle, who's our front of the house manager, so he's the guy that you see up front with glasses and a beard when you can see his face, not behind a mask. But between the two of them, I have this. They make it work, and I know that I can call them and tell them anything, and they're receptive to feedback.
Yep.
And not that there's a ton of that goes on, but and then they know that I have their back in whatever goes on.
And now that gives you time to focus on this second location.
Well, so the second location is really Billy's baby.
Okay.
So we designed the restaurant together. The recipes are all what we brought over from Sturbridge, and part of what made this restaurant be what it is so we used to do fried chicken Tuesdays, the first Tuesday of the month, where we'd sell upwards of 400 pounds of chicken a day. And so the idea with the new restaurant was that this is going to be fried chicken and barbecue.
Yep.
And it's going
from day one,
because it does so well on this one day that we think it can sustain the restaurant with the barbecue.
Yep.
And it is. We sell. The amount of fried chicken we're selling there is ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of your brisket, but when I also go down to Nashville for work, usually about 2 or 3 times a year, and so when I saw Nashville hot chicken, I think I was there that day.
Yeah.
When I said that online, I packed up my kids and my wife, and I said, "Let's go."
Awesome.
And it is delicious.
Thanks.
So that's his labor of love, and now are you at the point where you're now sitting back as that entrepreneur behind the computer, looking at the numbers of both of them and kind of just, like you mentioned, course correction, I like that term, for both of the restaurants?
Yeah. So like right now, we're going through the pandemic, and like we opened in September, in the middle of the pandemic in Worcester, which was for us was the worst possible time ever. Partially because we didn't want to be there. We wanted to open when it was a little bit slower going in, so we wanted to open last March.
Okay.
A year ago now, or a little bit over a year ago, so that we could pick up on like the end of the school year.
Yeah.
And then it slows down a little bit for the summer in Worcester. And then we could build up going into September and October. Well, we opened in September when everything else was shutting down or was shut down. It took us that long because of all the COVID issues in terms of getting open.
And I think I read your biggest thing was you could only have like one contractor in at a time and things like that.
Yeah.
Right?
And so it was really hard. And then, going through the boards with the city because of COVID and them not being open on certain days or whatever it was.
And then someone drove a car through your front door.
Yeah. Well, so then we get open and 2 weeks after we get open, all the schools go home. Like all the in-person schools. So that was like 100,000 people that we expected to be our base customers aren't there. And then, so it starts off slower than we wanted it to. And then someone drives through the front of the restaurant after we started to build up momentum.
So can I just comment one thing on this? Yeah. So I see a post. Somebody drove a car through the front door of this brand new restaurant. And I don't know who deserves the credit. I'm going to give it to you today, and maybe there's somebody else. But that place was open for business 24 hours later.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So both Billy and I adapt really well. Like, so my phone went off when the alarm company called and said, "Hey, there's an issue." And so anytime that happens, the first thing I do is look at the camera. And so I see a car in the restaurant, and I'm like, oh.
That's definitely a problem.
Yep. So I call Billy, and he's like, I know, the sensor just needs to be adjusted. And I'm like, no, Billy, look at the...
he's not wrong.
No, that's true. It's true.
He's not wrong.
I said, Billy, there's a car in the middle of the dining room. And he's like, what? I said, there's a car in the middle of the dining room. And neither one of us panicked. what are we going to do?
I would have just thought you were drinking too much or something.
There's just, I mean, but there's nothing, you know, so we're lucky it happened at 1 a.m. And it happened on a day where we were closed the next day. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, we started calling around, and we found Salisbury Construction that were like, we can be there today. We'll put up a false wall for you. We'll get this done. And so we did. It's just like this past weekend, we had a fire in Sturbridge, where the wall in between the stove and our food warmer caught on fire. And I'm really surprised it didn't happen before this, looking at the inside of that wall. But it was just this really thin piece of wood that caught on fire. And so I was in Lee, Mass when it happened, and I get a phone call from my manager saying, hey, there's a fire on fire. The restaurant's on fire. And I said, did you call the fire department? And he's like, no.
I called you first.
I said, all right, well, I'm going to hang up with you. Grab a fire extinguisher, and if you see flames, spray it.
Yeah.
So then I called the fire department, and they came out. But on my drive from Lee, Mass to Sturbridge, I had my contractor, plumber, and electrician all ready to be there at 8 o'clock the next morning.
No kidding.
And by 10 o'clock the Monday night, everything was fixed.
You would have been a great emergency room doctor.
Yeah, but like at this point, you know, all the things that could happen. So the worst thing that could have happened, the restaurant burns down. As long as my staff is okay, you know, everything could be rebuilt. And it's the same thing with the restaurant in Worcester. There's this, I have no control over these things that happened. And so I just have to deal with it. And it's, if I deal with it in panic, it's just going to cause me stress and heartache. Yeah. And it's going to cause the people that work with us stress and heartache. And so if I can figure it out on my own and get this fixed and, you know, and deal with the process, it just makes it easier. Yeah. I found this great quote once, or it's be like a duck, where you're nice and calm and serene on the surface,
and but your feet are just going
paddling
nuts
like crazy underneath.
Yep.
You know, and so that's kind of the way that I try to run everything, is that if I can portray this calm, you know, like I got this, it helps. And
in the car on the way there, you'll be making a billion phone calls and paddling like the duck under the water.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah. And so, but like right now, you know, we're dealing with in terms of the course correction stuff. So we've hit this perfect storm right now with meat prices. Yep. So right now, brisket has gone from $2.99 to this week it's going to be $5.30 a pound. And this is in like 6 weeks that it's changed. The chicken that we use for pulled chicken and for the fried chicken went from like 99 cents a pound to $2.30 a pound. The pork that we use went from $1.19 to $2.40, and there's no way to, like, I can't just double my prices. Yeah, you know. And so it's, well, how do we figure this out, and how do we make this so that it makes sense? Because all my profitability just went out the window. Sure. You know, and then how do I hire more staff right now, knowing that things are about to open up and get busier? And so these are this is what I do now behind the scenes. Oh. And so I analyze, you know, what is the max that we can charge for a brisket sandwich? Yep. Like we wrote the menu for Polar Park. We did it based on
then current pricing,
the current pricing. Yeah. And, you know, so going into the next homestand, I have to look at that and go, that's not going to work. Yeah. You know, with the percentage that the park takes and our cost for being there and that kind of stuff, there's no room. Even though we're going to be busier, which is going to help a whole lot. We have to figure out how to fix that. Sure. And so, you know, I'm on the phone constantly with my meat purveyors and talking to them, and then calling the actual manufacturers and figuring out what's going on with meat prices and what the futures look like. Because it's no longer like I'm not looking at buying, you know, meat today. I'm looking at buying meat in a month from now.
Yep.
And so I have to think that way. So, you know, last year between both restaurants, we sold somewhere close to 300,000 pounds of brisket. And this year it's going to be close to 450,000 pounds.
Wow.
And so looking at how that works, you know, in this climate, it's hard. But right now, so we're looking at the second smallest herd in the past 25 years for cattle. Pork, there's actually a little bit of a surplus, but two major processing plants closed, and they're probably never going to reopen. And part of the reason they closed was because of COVID, and so many people got sick and died that nobody wants to work there anymore. And so it basically put these two processing plants out of business.
Wow.
And that's a huge hit to the meat industry entirely. So pork, beef, and chicken. The cost of feed is the highest it's ever been since the potato famine. And that's because of drought and the derecho last year and just getting people to work.
Yeah.
And so then we have gas prices and the lack of drivers for trucks.
Transportation.
And so it's really this perfect storm of there's no and there really isn't an end in sight for this year. Like next year is going to be different. Like we're hoping that next year is going to be different.
We're hoping at least, right?
But like if walking through the grocery store, you know, it's hitting people.
Yep.
But for us that are relying on wholesale pricing, it's really volatile right now.
Sure.
And trying to constantly adjust to that is painful.
Yep.
You know, and then luckily I have an awesome customer base, and so I can say to them, and I try to be as transparent as possible. Like I put up a post about our beef ribs, which have always been, we have them on the menu because they're awesome. Do I make money on them? Not really. But they get you in the door and you buy something else, hopefully. Yep. But when I'm selling them for basically what they're costing me, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so our beef ribs, my cost on them was I think I had a 90% food cost on them. And so I made this big post about looking at what our meat prices were, and I'm going to have to change all of our prices across the board. But beef ribs, which I was selling for $11 a rib, when other people are selling them for $35 a rib here in Worcester. I needed to do something.
Yeah.
And so I changed them to market price.
Yep.
And I put them at $25. And the amount of ribs that we were selling dropped drastically.
Sure.
But people were really receptive in the way that they responded to us and saying, we trust you.
Yep. They appreciated the honesty.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, that's my job these days, is making sure that the restaurant is profitable and that everybody has their jobs, and that they're happy in their jobs. And then making sure that our customer base is I work on our brand.
Yep.
and building that brand.
Yep. I love it. Now, looking back on all that you've accomplished already, are you happy where you are today, not being the man putting the ribs in anymore and being able to work on the business?
Yeah, it really struck me, 2017, I think, or 16, 17. I was nominated, or I won 40 under 40.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm not just a food guy anymore. I'm not just a cook in a restaurant. I'm being recognized for my business sense. And that really hit me. Like, I'm a business owner. Like, this is a real thing. Yep. And so since then, it's made it easier, like, that I can do this. And working with Renee, and I also consulting for a Birch Tree Bread Company right now.
Yeah.
We took on another consulting gig with Cohasset Country Club, and being able to do those things, like, I really get joy out of it. It's fun.
I love it. So you've obviously taken on a lot of challenges in the last year. Sounds like you still have some that you're working through right now. Do you have any major big plans for the future? Is there a third location in the future? Are you going to focus on the second location for a period of time first?
So right now, like, you know, the Worcester location is struggling. It's not. We've had all of these things go against us. So somebody driving through the restaurant, 2 cases of COVID that shut us down for weeks at a time. And so right now, I need that restaurant to start making money.
Yeah.
You know, we've had some help with PPP and grants that have kept us where we need to be.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not like, yes, this restaurant can function on its own. Like we have the right staff in place and but until like I start seeing it like really function on its own.
Sure.
I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
And my real goal is for me and Billy to be comfortable. Yeah. So that I don't need an empire. I want to be able to take care of my kids. I want to have my house is awesome. I like going home. I like spending time there. I have a great girlfriend, and our relationship is great right now. And my quality of life to me is more important than anything else. And I want that for the people that are our family also, our BT's family. I want their quality of life to be the most important thing. And so keep adding on and stuff like that scares me because it adds more pressure.
Yep.
And I saw that this week with trying to do Polar Park and the 2 restaurants. And we took our managers, our current managers, and said, hey, we want to give you more responsibility. We want to give you more pay. The only way to do that is we open this place. Yep. And, you know, looking at, because the restaurants in this right now aren't making enough money to give them more.
Yeah.
But by having this other thing and having them take on more responsibility, I can give them more. And there was this point in the past week where it was like, this is too much.
Yeah.
This is a lot. We figured it out. You know, we made everything work. But trying to do that again, you know, like look at our staff and go, well, we're going to take somebody from here and we're going to take somebody from here and then we're going to open this other place.
And nothing else will suffer.
And nothing else will suffer. Isn't, you know, I don't see that happening right away.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, so if I see everybody getting complacent and, you know, like they're bored,
yep,
we'll open another place.
Yeah.
Or if I see them, you know, getting complacent and with like they're happy with their work and they're complacent with their life and things are good, maybe we just keep doing what we're doing because everybody's happy.
Absolutely.
You know.
So I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
And the fat kid in me has to ask this question. Anything new coming out on that menu that you're thinking about?
Well,
you trying to dabble in anything new? It's almost lunchtime for me, so.
Well, so tomorrow we're doing a thing with Birch Tree Bread Company.
Okay.
But so we're doing a croissant from Birch Tree, and then we're doing our fried chicken with pimento cheese on the croissant. So it's kind of like the thing we did with Glazy Susan.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing,
Yeah. But usually, like, what happens is I start to get bored of something on our menu.
Okay.
And I'll figure out what I want to change or what I want next. So the last biggest thing was adding the fried chicken on, and then we did bacon bites and Reuben balls. But those were like, I went to visit some friends and I had something that was similar, and I'm like,
I'm putting this
on the menu. Like the brisket Reuben, like I got tired of eating. I think I did the burrito first, and then I was like, I need something different to eat every day. And so we made the brisket Reuben. But it's normally like I'm not in the restaurant and I don't eat my food as much as I used to anymore. Sure. I enjoy eating it from time to time. Yeah. But it's usually when I get bored of something that I'm like, ooh, let's try this. Let's do something different.
Nice. And so Birch Tree collaboration.
Yep.
That comes out when?
Tomorrow.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I got lunch plans tomorrow now.
Yeah.
So,
so there's going to be 300 of them. We expect them to be sold by probably 2 or 3 in the.
All right. What time do you open?
At 11.
11. All right. Got it.
Yeah.
Calendar reminder for myself. Yeah. Calendar reminder. So,
yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. I love to hear stories like that. You know, myself, I have a completely different story, but a similar story where we started very small and we just worked our tails off and slowly grew as well. And I love to hear a story of hard work and passion, because I think that's what probably kept you going to increase into a new location and then add on more seats and then to grow a second location, is that you were enjoying what you're doing and the people you're doing with. And I love to hear a success story like that. Thanks for sharing it with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Founder Story Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And don't forget to check out some of the other great stories.